sounds of war through the night, the Russian army uses barbaric tactics to wear out Ukrainian fighters as Putin's tanks begin to encircle Kyiv, the capital, for a brutal assault this weekend. This Friday evening, neither side is sure how Europe's first war in 80 years will end. We'll start there. Welcome to the program. I'm Leland Vittert. What's worse is it appears every day the war goes on, the bloodier and more confusing things get on the ground. We're going to get to just how bad the situation is in Mariupol, Ukraine's southern port city, now under a medieval siege, as Russian artillery slowly levels a city and kills the trapped civilian population. But we begin tonight with what appears to be the meaningless threats of a sitting U.S. president. The realization of that is more dangerous here at home and around the world than anything that is happening in Ukraine. Here is President Biden today talking about a possible Russian chemical weapons attack.
Putin is an aggressor. He is the aggressor. Putin must pay the price. Russia would pay a severe price.
You have to wonder who Mr. Biden is speaking to, because Vladimir Putin has shown he doesn't care about an American threat or an American price that he will have to pay. Let's go back to Putin's 2014 invasion of Ukraine when Mr. Biden was vice president.
And make no mistake, Russia is paying a price. In short, Russia's actions in Ukraine are weakening Russia.
Putin did what he wanted in 2014. I was there as he shelled Ukrainian towns. He ended up taking Crimea and emerged from the war far stronger. In fact, Putin's military helped with the Syrian gas attack that then President Obama had laid down his red line about. Putin watched as the red line was crossed with no American action. Fast forward to the latest crisis. Here is now President Biden in December of last year.
I've made it absolutely clear to President Putin markedly. He'll pay a terrible price.
Putin, of course, heard that. He watches American news closely and continued to mass his troops on the Ukrainian border. Fast forward to January, a couple of months ago, as the Russians' language towards NATO and Ukraine became far more belligerent.
But they'll pay a stiff price immediately, near term, medium term, and long term if they do it.
Well, they did it, but not before this in February. Russian forces looked ready for an invasion. In fact, the Pentagon called D-Day H hour almost to the hour. It was a remarkable feat of intelligence by the United States. And President Biden again promised, well, maybe you have figured out what he's going to say by now. Take a listen.
And he would pay a heavy price. And there will be a lot to pay for that down the road.
And Putin, in a way, is paying a price. For example, today, Mr. Biden banned the import of Russian caviar and the export of American luxury goods loved by Putin's oligarch buddies. It is a price that Putin is paying. It's just clearly not a price that Vladimir Putin cares about. And that is a big problem. Putin knows what we will and will not do. In fact, today, President told him for at least the 10th time what we would not do.
We will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. Direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III. Something we must.
He went on, something we must strive, in the words of President Biden, to prevent. And you can't really blame President Biden here. He's being honest about the guiding principle of U.S. policy in Europe. And it can be summed up pretty simply in terms of how President Biden has looked at things over the past, say, 8 or 9 months. Don't provoke Putin. Just a few days ago, in fact, President Biden himself personally killed the deal to get Ukraine the fighter jets it needs. In fact, his Secretary of State had given it the green light. But Mr. Biden feared it would provoke Putin. We never sent, and still haven't sent, the Ukrainians Harpoon missiles to defend its coastal cities for fear of provoking Putin. I could go on. For all the talk of extracting a price from Putin, the only red lines we, as America, seem to care about are the red lines of the Russian president. All of our actions are reactions to the red lines that Putin has drawn for the United States. For all the hand-wringing on cable news about how evil Mr. Putin is, and he is indeed evil, we really shouldn't be that surprised. He has shown us time and time and time again exactly who he is. It's not partisan. Remember, George W. Bush looked into his soul, in the words of past president, and then Vladimir Putin invaded the country of Georgia. He invaded Chechnya. He gassed Syria. He shot down a commercial airliner over Ukraine, killing hundreds. He leveled large parts of Syria during his invasion by Russian forces of that country, which gets us back to Mr. Biden's comments today.
Putin is an aggressor. He is the aggressor. Putin must pay the price. Russia would pay a severe price.
Honest question here as we look at the president's national security team. Do they really think Putin cares about that threat? And it's a serious question. It doesn't have a good answer. If the men around the table in the White House Situation Room think Putin cares, they have not learned anything over the past decade. If they think Putin does not care, why let the president say something that Putin will use and continues to use to embarrass Mr. Biden and the United States of America? Congressman Mark Green joins us now, U.S. former Army Ranger, Special Operations Flight Surgeon, member of the House Foreign Affairs and Armed Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you. President Biden's the commander-in-chief. Policy's policy. Why continue this charade of there will be a price to pay?
Well, the president is delusional on any response that Putin is going to have to anything he says. The track record is clear, and quite frankly, your monologue laid it out perfectly. You can go to the red line in Syria. You can go to Crimea. I actually met the other day, Leland, with a Ukrainian refugee. She had just gotten into Nashville from Ukraine. She gave me all these things that Ukrainians needed from America, and then she said, would you please win elections? Because when Democrats are in charge, Ukrainians die. That's what she said to me. I mean, these people are deluded. They don't understand power. They don't know who the bad guy is. The bad guys are. I mean,
in fairness, though, not having force on force between the United States, probably Air Force, if we were to have a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and Russian fighters is something we'd like to prevent, right?
There's no doubt about that. But the stair-stepped approach on these sanctions, which continues, is doing nothing but emboldening Putin. What we need to do is slam down his energy economy. I mean, we're still allowing exceptions on sanctions for energy transfers. And now I'm not talking about our buying their oil, but I'm talking about any oil transaction through the SWIFT banks. We need to stop that. I mean, shut down this guy's economy, crush the ruble. We're not doing it. And Biden keeps stair-stepping it. And it's only saying, okay, Putin, I'm just playing. I'm not for real.
No, we've talked about that, but it would mean having the Germans and the Japanese and the South Koreans, who get an awful lot of their oil and their natural gas from Vladimir Putin, buying in on that. It doesn't seem like we have that yet.
Look, we have to crank up our own energy sector. I mean, this is a theme that's been going on since day one of this crisis, and Biden wants to blame this energy situation on Putin. That's a blatant lie. They're not granting permits.
Fair enough, though. But that's domestic energy. You can't all of a sudden replace the oil and gas tomorrow that Germany or Japan's going to get from Russia. If we put all these sanctions and secondary sanctions on what are our allies, aren't we going to just be made fools of when Japan and Germany tell us that they're siding with Putin and buying his gas?
Well, one, I don't think that happens. Leland, we were in a briefing in October with the administration officials and said, are you lining up the gas, the liquefied natural gas, to take it to Europe? And they looked like they were puzzled that they didn't even think that was something we could do. We should have been thinking about this 6 months ago. We've had intel for a long time that this was coming, and this administration failed.
Yeah, fair enough. And to their credit, you can't say they missed the intel, because they were the ones who called this hour by hour, day by day as it was happening. Turn this around. Is there something that President Biden could get up and say, because paying a price clearly does not make Vladimir Putin stop? Is there something that he could say he would do short of World War III that would make Vladimir Putin stop?
Vladimir Putin needs some kind of, if you want to know how to end this. Either Lindsey Graham gets his wish, or, which is a horrible thing for an American politician to say, or you find some way to get a win for Vladimir Putin. The only win he wants is Zelensky gone, and that's not acceptable. So I'm not sure there's anything you can do to turn Vladimir Putin off. I can't come up with a win for him that actually allows Ukraine to be a sovereign nation. So I think we need to supply those guys with aircraft and every piece of lethal aid we can, and let them kill Germans. Russians. Well, we get this Nazi thing going, but yeah, kill Russians, and maybe those body bags going back to Russia will do something for those mothers, and maybe Putin is no longer in charge.
I don't want you to share anything that you've heard in these briefings. I know you would not. But
Right.
Looking forward, is there a plan to ratchet up the intensity of the attacks on the Russian forces in Ukraine by the Ukrainians that would give the Ukrainians a win? You said, what's a win for Ukraine look like?
Well, a win for Ukraine looks like just holding on and Zelensky staying in power. He has to survive, right? Because Putin's end game here is to change out the leadership, put in a puppet, and then go home. But the problem with that is the Ukrainians don't accept it. They've already overthrown one puppet from Russia. So the win is just hanging on and staying in the fight. And it may be decades. This may be an insurgency that lasts 10 years. If that's the case, imagine what grain prices are going to be in the world for the next 10 years. Ukraine won't be producing grain.
Grain, oil, titanium, the list,
Absolutely.
palladium, everything else goes on. Hey, Congressman, we got to run, but we appreciate it. Have a great weekend, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.